It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, nothing special. I'd just come home from my shift at the clinic, tired, hungry, with a slight ache in my right heel that had been bothering me for weeks now. I was in the kitchen, trying to remember if I'd defrosted the chicken when Michael came in, coat half on, muttering something about losing his damn car keys again. "Did you check the garage?" I asked. "Probably fell behind the bench," he grumbled, already heading out. 10 minutes later, I went to help. He had that look, frustrated, pacing, pulling things apart but never looking properly. So I rolled up my sleeves, crouched down next to the red toolbox he always swore was organized by system, and started digging through the mess. And that's when I found it. It was tucked beneath an old sock and a faded birthday card, like it had been forgotten, but not really. Hidden, more like. It was black, plain, a different model than the one Michael used every day. At first, I thought maybe it was an old phone, but then the screen lit up. Just like that. No passcode, no nothing. The message popped up, like the universe had decided I needed to see it. "Can't wait to see you again." Same room. I stared at it. Then I read it again. Same room. Like they had a favorite. Like it had happened before. More than once. My mouth went dry. My heart didn't race. Not yet. It was like my brain was filing the moment into a drawer labelled "saw." Not real. I stood there holding it in both hands like it might burn me or disappear. Then I pressed the power button. Locked. 6-digit code. Of course. But the notifications still hovered there on the screen, taunting me like a whisper in the dark. Michael was still rattling around in the driveway, swearing at the recycling bin. I slid the phone back into the exact spot where I'd found it, like it had never been touched, and quietly closed the toolbox. My hands were cold. Too cold for late spring. I walked back into the kitchen. My heels still hurt, and the chicken was still frozen. I sat down at the table, looked out the window, and tried to breathe. I didn't know who sent that message. I didn't know what "same room" meant. I didn't know how long it had been going on. But I knew in that exact moment that something had just shifted, quietly, like the click of a lock behind you. And I wasn't sure if I'd ever feel safe in my own home again. The morning after I found the phone, everything was exactly the same, and that was the strangest part. Michael was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. He had made coffee just like he always did. Black for him, 1 sugar and a splash of milk for me. He handed me my mug with a little smile, the same smile he gave me every morning for years, as if we were still newlyweds and mornings were sacred. "I dreamed we were on a boat last night," he said, taking a sip. "You kept yelling at dolphins." I laughed, softly, politely, because that's what you do when someone you've loved for 30 years tells you a dream. But in my head, I was still in the garage, staring at that message. Same room. Heart emoji. The house was warm, the smell of toast filled the air, and the radio was playing something old and familiar. I moved on autopilot, but I noticed everything more now. The way Michael scratched the back of his neck when he lied. The way he avoided eye contact when asking if I had plans that day. I said I was working a short shift at the clinic. He nodded, kissed my forehead like he always did. The strange thing is, if you had asked me a week ago, I would have said my life was peaceful. Predictable, yes, but comforting. We had our routines. Friday night takeout, Sunday morning grocery runs, movie nights with old black and whites, just the two of us under a throw blanket we'd had since the 90s. Michael wasn't perfect. He snored like a tractor and always left the butter out. But he was steady, dependable. Or so I believed. We had been married for 31 years. We'd raised 2 kids, both grown now, both living states away. We'd paid off the house early. We'd buried my sister, my mother, and his dog all in the same decade. And through all of it, Michael was there, holding my hand, rubbing my back when I cried, making stupid jokes when the grief got too loud. I thought I knew the shape of my life. I thought love was quiet and safety was built over decades, not tested overnight. But now every small kindness felt suspicious. Every routine too perfect, too rehearsed. I didn't say anything about the phone, not yet. I told myself I needed more proof, more clarity. But the truth was simpler than that. I was afraid. Afraid to break the illusion. Afraid of what I would lose if I asked the question and got the answer I already knew. So I smiled through breakfast, kissed his cheek when he left for work, and washed our mugs like always, while the ground beneath everything we'd built started to shift. I told myself I wouldn't touch it again. I told myself I'd wait for a mistake, for a sign, for something undeniable. But waiting made me feel like I was drowning in silence. Every time Michael left the room, every time he laughed at a commercial or folded a towel, it felt like a performance, a play I didn't know I'd bought tickets to. So the next day, when he left to run errands, I went straight to the garage. I opened the toolbox with shaking hands. The phone was still there, tucked beneath the same old sock like it hadn't moved at all. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe he really thought I'd never find it. Or maybe he forgot it was even there. Either way, it was waiting for me. I sat on the garage floor, knees popping in protest, and held the phone in both hands like it was made of glass. I pressed the button. The screen lit up again. Locked. 6 digits. I tried our wedding anniversary, month, day, year. The screen blinked, then unlocked. Just like that. I actually laughed. Out loud. A short, stunned sound that felt wrong in my throat. Not because it was funny, but because of how easy it was. 31 years together, and this was the code he used to hide another life. The inbox was full. The first name I saw was Danielle, then hotel confirmed, then miss you already. I opened the messages slowly, like turning the pages of a diary that didn't belong to me, but also did. Danielle sent selfies, mirror shots from hotels. One in a robe, pouting at the camera, bed in the background unmade. Another of their dinner, wine glasses, candles, her hand over his. Receipts followed, hotel confirmations, Uber rides, dinner reservations, places he told me he was travelling for work. I remember one time he brought home a keychain from Cincinnati. He never went to Cincinnati. He went to Danielle. My fingers trembled as I scrolled. There were photos of him, too. Michael smiling across a restaurant table. Michael in a towel, holding a champagne bottle. Michael asleep on a hotel bed. I almost dropped the phone. I sat there, breath frozen, stomach cold, staring at a version of the man I thought I knew. A man I had trusted with my entire life. My body. My heart. My future. And here he was, laughing, drinking, holding someone else. I didn't cry. Not yet. There was something sharper than tears blooming inside me. Not grief, not yet, but something that felt a lot like awakening. I closed the phone, held it in my lap for a full minute, just breathing. In, out, in, out, the way they teach you in grief groups. My palms were sweaty, but my mind, strangely, was sharp, focused. Not a single scream came out of me. No throwing things, no dramatic collapsing to the floor, just a slow, methodical stillness. I'd spent my life responding to emergencies. Bleeding patients, collapsed lungs, frightened families. You learn not to panic. You learn that control is more powerful than chaos. And this was my personal emergency, but it wasn't going to control me. So I did what came naturally. I took notes, I went back into the phone and started screenshotting everything. The messages, the photos, the receipts, every miss you already and see you soon, baby. Every reservation under his name. Every time-stamped moment of their little fantasy life. I made sure to capture the dates, the room numbers, the full names. Then I emailed it all to myself. I created a folder, just called it June. Nondescript. Nothing to hint at what it really was. Then I backed it up to a flash drive I kept in my sewing kit. Michael hadn't opened that drawer since the second Bush administration. The coldest part? While I sat there documenting my husband's betrayal, he was out somewhere, probably buying bananas or arguing with a cashier about coupons. And I was cataloguing his double life like a crime scene investigator. I didn't tell him when he came home. I made tea. We talked about weather. He told me the gas prices had gone up again. I nodded like I cared, but something had shifted in me. I started listening differently, watching his expressions like a scientist might observe an animal in the wild. Every shrug, every glance at his phone, every time he said, "just work stuff," my ears picked it all up, filed it away. He kissed me goodnight that evening. His lips brushed mine like always. And I stood there in the bathroom afterward, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked the same, but I wasn't. I'd crossed a line inside, a quiet, invisible one. The moment I chose not to confront, but to prepare. I wasn't ready to set the world on fire. Not yet. But I was gathering matches, and something deep in my gut whispered, wait, watch, learn, then decide. And that's exactly what I plan to do. We met in the fall of 1991. I was working nights at the hospital back then, still wearing scrubs with cartoon bears on them and pulling double shifts like I had something to prove. Michael was visiting his uncle in recovery. Car accident, nothing fatal. But he stayed late every night, always sitting in the corner chair with a paperback and a cup of vending machine coffee. One night, around 3 a.m., he offered me the coffee. I said I didn't drink brown water. He laughed, said, "Then let me buy you the real thing sometime." And just like that, it started. He had an easy charm, not flashy, but warm, gentle. He listened when I talked, asked about my patients, learned my sister's name, bought me second-hand books with little notes in the margins. After years of dating men who only called after 10 p.m., Michael felt like someone steady, someone who wanted the real me, even the tired, messy, unfiltered version. We moved in together a year later, bought our first home 2 years after that, a modest ranch with creaky floors and a tiny kitchen. I still remember painting the bedroom walls blue and getting paint on my jeans. He said, "Now they're your work pants." I wore them for 5 years after that. When he proposed, it wasn't flashy, just him, me, and a Sunday morning pancake. He slid the ring box across the table and said, "I don't ever want to be without you." I cried. Of course I said yes. We built a life in the small, intentional ways people do when they think it's forever. Joint bank accounts, matching mugs, a dog named Tucker, 2 kids, a garden. He handled the bills, the yard work. I did the meals, the schedules, the Christmas cards. Back then, I didn't see it as control. I saw it as partnership. But lately, after the phone, after the messages, I started remembering the little things, the passwords he insisted we share, but somehow I only ever used mine. The way he always double-checked the mailbox, how nervous he got whenever we talked about our finances out loud. "Let me take care of it, babe. It's all boring numbers anyway." The business trips that always popped up right before anniversaries. The way he was always too tired for photos, for family videos, for calls with our daughter when she moved away. I used to think he was just tired, just private. Now I wonder if it was all part of the same thing, this slow erosion of transparency I'd mistaken for trust. 31 years. And somehow, I'm just now realizing I might have spent them loving a stranger. Her name was Lena T. I found her in the contact list, tucked between a Don's tires and someone named Angela, old friend. But Lena's name had a little heart next to it. Of course it did. When I tapped the message thread, I expected more of the same, flirtation, hotel plans, pictures. But this one was different. Longer messages, voice notes, jokes about things only the two of them understood. And not just lust. There was tenderness, familiarity. Like she wasn't just someone he'd met at a conference, but someone who had Roots. She called him her steady. He called her his Lena. There were messages going back months, maybe more. My stomach turned, not because of the cheating, that betrayal had already settled into my bones, but because of the pattern, the rhythm. He wasn't just cheating. He was living another life. Lena had an Instagram account linked in her bio photo. It was public. I clicked. The face that stared back at me was pretty. Late 40s, maybe early 50s. Blonde, but bottle blonde. Big smile. The kind of woman who posts inspirational quotes over beach sunsets and pictures of her smoothies with little hearts in the caption. She had posted a photo 3 days ago of a dinner table. 2 wine glasses, 2 plates, flickering candles. No faces. But I recognized the pattern on the tablecloth. It matched the one in the hotel Michael had stayed at last month. The one he said was a work thing in Des Moines. There were others too. Photos of hands holding hers, photos of her feet on hotel bedsheets, always cropped, always coy. The captions made me feel like I'd swallowed glass. Missing my steady. Back to reality, or for now. Soon. I clicked into the comments. Michael's name wasn't there, but there was a username I didn't recognize, one that looked generic, just a string of numbers and initials. I checked the contact info in his hidden phone. Same username. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, and I did something I didn't expect. I opened a message window. To Lena. I wrote, "Does he tell you he loves you too?" Then I deleted it. Then I typed, "You should know he's married." Deleted again. I sat there with my finger shaking over the keyboard. I could have sent it. I wanted to send it. But something held me back. Not fear exactly. Not pity either, just the quiet understanding that this wasn't about Lena or the others. This was about Michael and the man I thought I knew no longer existed. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, sunny, slow, the kind of day that makes you think nothing in the world could possibly go wrong. Michael was in the backyard, fixing the bird feeder that had tilted after the last storm. I was folding laundry in the living room, warm towels in my lap, the faint hum of the dryer behind me. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. At first, I smiled. Just an instinct. It had been years since he randomly texted me anything sweet in the middle of the day. But the smile faded the second I read it. "Room's all set. Got the same champagne. Can't wait to feel your legs around me again." I sat perfectly still. The laundry in my hands went cold. Another buzz. This time a follow-up message. "Sorry. Wrong person. LOL." My hands were shaking, not from rage, from something worse. Recognition. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. Casual. Confident. Routine. This wasn't the first time he'd sent that message, just the first time he sent it to me. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I stood and walked outside. He looked up when I approached, wiping his hands on a rag, squinting in the sunlight. "Hey," he said. "What's up?" I held up my phone, the message still glowing on the screen. "Wrong person?" There was a flicker, barely half a second, but I saw it. That pause, the flicker of dread just behind his eyes. Then the performance began. He laughed, too loud, too quick. "Oh God, that was a joke." "I was messing with Tom. He and I were talking about anniversary surprises. I figured I'd be funny." "Tom?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Yeah, you know Tom from the gym," he said, waving it off like it was nothing. "Just messing around." I nodded slowly. "Funny." He chuckled again, then leaned down to adjust the feeder as if the conversation was over. I stood there a moment longer, letting silence hang in the air like smoke. Then I turned and walked back inside. No yelling, no questions. Just another note in the mental folder, another name, another lie. Later that night, he kissed my shoulder while we watched a rerun of some old detective show. He said, "You know I love you, right?" I looked at him, smiled just enough to keep the peace and whispered back, "Of course I do." But in my chest, something cracked. Small, sharp, permanent, because now I knew for certain. Even his mistakes came rehearsed. We were halfway to the grocery store when Michael realized he'd forgotten his wallet. "Can you check the glove box?" he asked, one hand on the wheel, the other drumming the steering wheel like he was keeping time with his nerves. "Sure," I said, already reaching. It was the first time in years he'd asked me to open that glove box. Usually, if he needed something, he got it himself. Always protective of the car, of the compartments, of what he called his space. The latch clicked open with a soft snap, and I sifted past the usual mess: napkins, an old phone charger, a half-crushed roll of Tums. No wallet. But then I saw it. A folded piece of thermal paper tucked between the car manual and a pack of gum. Just a receipt. But not from a gas station. Not from a fast food drive-thru. It was from a hotel. I unfolded it slowly, careful not to crinkle the edges. I don't even know why. Maybe out of reverence or dread. The name printed at the top, the Rose Bay Inn. I'd never heard of it. But the address was local, 10 miles from our house, the date yesterday. Check-in 2:17 p.m. Check-out 11:04 a.m. Room type King Deluxe, 2 guests, champagne add-on. My breath caught. There was even a little note at the bottom: "Thank you for choosing us again." Again. Again. I slipped the receipt into my coat pocket and closed the glove box gently, like nothing happened. Michael looked over. "Find it?" "Nope," I said, eyes straight ahead. "Must be at home." He nodded, turned up the radio. Some upbeat song from the 80s came on, and he started humming, tapping the steering wheel with a smile like nothing in the world was wrong. We picked up milk, bananas, a rotisserie chicken. He joked with the cashier, asked me if I wanted to stop for ice cream. I said I was tired. Back home, he carried in the bags. I told him I was going to lie down. I went into the bedroom, pulled the receipt from my pocket, and stared at it under the lamp. My fingers traced the print, like maybe I could smudge it away, erase it, undo it. But it was real. No password, no fake name, no ambiguity. A receipt doesn't lie. Michael had spent the afternoon in a hotel, our 10th Wednesday this year. He'd said he was working late, and now I had the timestamp to prove it. I waited until the house was quiet. Michael had gone for a run, something he only recently started doing again. Said it helped him clear his head. Ironic, considering the things he was trying to keep hidden. I sat at the kitchen table with the receipt in front of me, smoothing the edges with the palm of my hand like it was something sacred. The name of the hotel stared up at me. The Rose Bay Inn. I Googled it. 3 stars. Local. Discreet. My fingers hovered over the phone for longer than I'd like to admit. Then I dialed. "Thank you for calling the Rose Bay Inn. This is Amanda speaking. How can I help you today?" I swallowed. My mouth had gone dry. "Hi. I'm calling about a recent stay. I believe my husband had a reservation yesterday. Michael Sanders." A pause. "Yes," she said cheerfully, typing. I could hear the clicking of her keyboard. "One moment while I look that up." I almost hung up. Almost. "Ah, yes. Michael Sanders. Checked in at 2:17 p.m. Checked out next morning. King Deluxe room, 2 guests." 2 guests. She said it like it was the weather. Casual, harmless. I closed my eyes, let the words wash over me. King Deluxe. Champagne. Thank you for choosing us again. "Was anything noted on the reservation?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, then replied, "Just that he requested early check-in and champagne upon arrival. That's all. Of course, no surprises, no disguises. He didn't even try to hide it. He was using his real name, his real card. There wasn't shame, there wasn't guilt, just confidence. Routine. Thank you," I said and hung up before she could say another word. I sat there, phone in my hand, the dial tone humming faintly like static in my ear. 2 guests. It echoed in my mind over and over again like the slow, steady drip of a leaking faucet. He had shared a room, a bed, champagne, laughter, with someone else, just miles from our home, our marriage, our life. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just stared at the wall, at the framed picture of our family taken 8 Christmases ago. Everyone smiling, wearing red. Michael's arm wrapped around my shoulders. I remembered how warm he felt that day, how solid. And now that same arm had held someone else, while I folded his laundry and cooked his meals and believed him when he said he was working late. This wasn't a suspicion anymore, it was a fact. And facts are unforgiving. The lake was quiet that morning. It always is on weekdays. Just me, a couple of ducks, and the occasional jogger making their way around the gravel path. I parked in the same spot I used to take the kids when they were little. We'd feed the geese crackers and laugh when they hissed. Michael used to come with us back when we still remembered how to be a family. Now it was just me, alone in the car, hands on the wheel, engine off. Silence so thick it felt like I could choke on it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the water, letting the sunlight skip across it like it didn't know what betrayal was. Like the lake had no idea someone could smile at you in the morning and betray you by lunch. It's a strange thing growing older with someone. You build this quiet trust over years, brick by brick, small routines, whispered apologies, Sunday afternoons with laundry and takeout. You think time protects you. That length means strength. That history means loyalty. But it doesn't. Sometimes it just means they've had more time to learn how to lie to you. Kindly. I'm 57 years old, and I feel invisible. Not just to Michael, but to the world. You reach a certain age and people stop looking at you. Cashiers talk slower, like you can't hear. Waiters call you mom, like it's a curse. You become the woman in the corner, the afterthought, the one who smiles politely and folds the napkins just right. And maybe Michael stopped seeing me too. Maybe he saw Lena, or Danielle, or whoever came next because they were shinier, newer, because they didn't have laugh lines or fading freckles or a soft belly earned from 2 pregnancies and 30 years of keeping everyone else fed. Or maybe he just stopped looking, and I let him. That's the part that stings the most, the quiet truth that somewhere along the way, I made myself smaller, easier, convenient. I said, I'm fine, even when I wasn't. I carried his guilt without asking questions. I didn't rock the boat. And now? Now I'm here, sitting in a parked car beside a lake, wondering how long it's been since I actually looked at myself. The version of me before Michael, before the marriage, before the forgetting. There's a loneliness in betrayal that no one talks about. Not just the loss of love, but the loss of who you thought you were when you were loved. I used to know that woman. And I hope I'm about to meet her again. That night, I couldn't sleep. Michael was snoring softly beside me, one arm flung over the blanket like he didn't have a secret life stitched into the folds of our marriage. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each creak of the house. My mind wasn't racing, it was organizing. I'd cried enough in my head, now I needed proof. Not just pain, not just suspicion, something real, something that wouldn't vanish in a cloud of denial if I ever said it out loud. The next morning, after Michael left for work, I drove straight to the hardware store and bought a voice recorder. Small, discreet, fit perfectly inside my purse. The man behind the counter gave me a smile like I was planning to record bird songs. I also picked up a portable scanner. Nothing fancy, but enough to copy documents without leaving the house. I stopped by the dollar store for a pack of folders, labels, post-it notes. The woman ahead of me in line was buying balloons for her grandson's birthday. I wanted to tap her shoulder and say, "Don't forget to check the glove box, and the phone bills, and the hotel receipts." But I didn't. I drove home, made tea, and got to work. I started with the bank statements. downloaded every one of them, printed copies, highlighted dates that matched his work trips, noted the out-of-state charges, the double dinners, the room service. Next came the emails. I hadn't dared check his personal laptop yet. It had a password I didn't know, but I went through our shared family computer. He was lazy with deleting browser history. That helped. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and started a timeline. Nothing dramatic, just facts. Dates, times, receipts, patterns, a line drawn carefully from lie to lie. Every piece of evidence went into its own folder. Labelled, dated, cross-referenced. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't some theatrical soap opera plan. It was survival, preparation, insurance. If this ever went legal, I wouldn't walk in with just tears and a trembling voice. I'd walk in with facts, with truth. I even took photos of everything valuable in the house. His watches, our wedding china, the tools in the garage. Just in case. I backed everything up on a flash drive and hid it in an empty flour tin behind the rice. By the time Michael came home, I was cooking dinner like always. He kissed me on the cheek, told me I smelled good. I smiled and stirred the sauce. He didn't know it yet, but I wasn't his secret-keeping wife anymore. I was a woman building her case, carefully, quietly, and this time, for me. He made steak. That alone should have been a red flag. Michael never cooked unless it was grilling season, and even then it was just burgers on the deck with a beer in hand. But that night, a Wednesday, I walked into the kitchen, and there he was, apron on, oven mitt hanging from the drawer, the table set with candles we hadn't touched in years. "Surprise," he said, grinning like a teenager. "Thought we could have a date night, just us." I froze in the doorway for half a second too long. Then I smiled. How could I not? The man I used to love, the one I built my life with, was standing there with mashed potatoes and a bottle of red wine, acting like he hadn't spent last Wednesday in a hotel bed that wasn't ours. I sat down, let him pour me a glass, listened to him talk about some video he saw online, some story from work, some memory of our trip to Maine 15 years ago. He laughed easily. His eyes sparkled. He touched my hand across the table like it still meant something. And I played along. Because that's what you do when you're at the very edge of something you can't quite name. We ate. We talked. He even put music on. Soft, jazzy, the kind of background hum that always made me feel like we were pretending to be more romantic than we really were. And then, as I was loading our plates into the sink, he came up behind me and kissed my neck. "I love you," he said. 3 words, quiet, warm, familiar, but they didn't land. They fell like pennies into a dry well, no echo, no depth, just the soft thud of something hollow. I turned to look at him. His face was soft, his expression sincere. And in that exact moment, I realized something enormous. I didn't love him anymore, not in the way I used to, not in the way that matters. Something inside me had gone quiet. Still. Not cold, not yet, but separate. Like a door had closed inside me without making a sound. I smiled, kissed his cheek, whispered, "I love you too." And it wasn't a lie exactly. It was muscle memory. A phrase said so many times it no longer needed thought. But as I washed the dishes and listened to him hum in the next room, I knew the truth. My love had packed its suitcase the night I found that phone, and now it was already halfway out the door. It took me 2 days to work up the nerve. Her profile was public. I had her full name, a couple of posts that tagged the yoga studio she taught at, and a boutique cafe she liked to frequent. One of those airy places with green walls, overpriced pastries, and tables made of reclaimed wood. I told myself I just wanted to see her, just to look at the woman Michael chose. But when I walked into that cafe, I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel jealousy. I felt curious. She was already there, sitting by the window, sipping something with foam shaped like a leaf. Her hair was lighter in person, roots slightly grown out, and she wore leggings, a denim jacket, and a soft pink scarf. She looked younger than me, but not young. Just polished. I walked up slowly, heart pounding in my chest like I was approaching a stranger's dog that might bite. "Lena?" I asked. She looked up, blinked, tilted her head. "Yes?" "I'm Sarah, Michael Sanders' wife." The words hung between us like broken glass. She didn't say anything at first. Her mouth opened, then closed, her hands clenched around her mug. "Wife?" she finally said, barely a whisper. I sat down without asking. "I'm not here to make a scene. I just need to know how much of it you knew." She stared at me. "He told me. He told me you were separated, that you were living apart, that the divorce was taking time because of financial stuff." Her eyes welled up and I saw it. The shock was real. The pain, the humiliation. The way her hands trembled when she reached for her purse and pulled out her phone. "I didn't know," she said, breath shaky. "I swear to you, I would never. God, I'm not that kind of woman." I believed her. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe it didn't matter. But in that moment, across a small cafe table, we were two women sitting in the ruins of the same man's lies. She scrolled through her messages. "Look, he said he was staying with a friend. He said you were dating someone too. He told me he couldn't wait to make it official." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. He said that while we were eating pot roast and watching Wheel of Fortune. We sat there for a long time. Neither of us touched our drinks. She offered to forward me everything. I thanked her. And as I walked out of that cafe, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. Michael hadn't just betrayed me. He'd built an entire fiction and sold it to someone else like it was a dream. And now? Now the dream was unraveling, one woman at a time. The law office was on the second floor of a building that used to be a dentist's office. The paint was fresh, but I could still smell the faint trace of fluoride in the air. I don't know what I expected. Oak panels, cold leather chairs, someone with a tight bun and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. But when the door opened, there she was. Late 30s, maybe. Brown curls pulled into a messy knot, oversized blazer and bright white sneakers with pink laces. "Hi," she said, offering her hand. "You must be Sarah. I'm Melissa." I shook her hand and tried to smile, though my jaw felt locked in place. We sat in a small office with sunlight pouring through half-open blinds. On her desk were colour-coded folders, a steaming cup of tea, and a tiny cactus with googly eyes stuck to the pot. Not what I imagined. Better, somehow. She didn't waste time. "So," she said gently, "tell me what's going on." And I did. It was the first time I said it all out loud. The phone in the toolbox, the messages, the hotel receipts, Lena, the cafe, the quiet pretending, my folders, my flash drive. The way he still kissed me goodnight like nothing had shattered. Melissa didn't gasp, didn't lean back in shock. She just nodded, took notes, asked clear, practical questions. And then she looked up, pen resting in her hand, and said, "What do you want, Sarah?" The room went quiet. I opened my mouth, closed it. No one had asked me that. Not in years. Not really. "I want to leave," I said. She nodded. "Okay." I blinked. "Just like that?" I asked. She smiled. "Just like that. You're not the first woman to walk in here with a folder and a fire in her chest." My throat tightened. Fire in her chest. That's exactly what it felt like. Melissa walked me through the basics: joint property, retirement accounts, the house, the cars, what to expect. She told me what I could do legally, what I should not do, and what steps to take next. It wasn't scary the way I thought it would be. It was structured, clear, possible. Before I left, she handed me a list of things to gather. "You've already done most of this," she said, scanning my notes. "You're ahead of the game." I smiled, really smiled for the first time in weeks, because for the first time I wasn't just reacting. I was deciding. As I walked down those stairs and stepped out into the sunlight, I didn't feel broken. I felt ready. And God help him, Michael had no idea who he was about to lose. The sound of his snoring was almost comforting. Almost. It was past midnight. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional creak from the baseboards. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my robe, a single lamp casting a warm glow over the stack of papers in front of me. Michael was asleep in the next room, sprawled across our bed like a man without secrets. And I was moving our money. Well, my money. I had opened a new account earlier that week under my name only. A different bank. One he didn't use, didn't even like. He once called it too millennial, which made it perfect. Now, with the laptop open and the login screen glowing, I began the process. I entered the joint account details, the routing numbers, the transfer amount. My hands didn't shake, not even a little. I was calm, focused. I wasn't stealing. I was preserving. I left enough in the joint account to avoid suspicion. Just enough to cover groceries, bills, his golf league payments. But the savings? The inheritance from my mother? The small lump sum I'd received after 30 years of working at the hospital? Gone. Moved. Secured. The confirmation screen blinked back at me. Transfer complete. I exhaled slowly. Then I started photographing documents. Insurance policies, retirement statements, the deed to the house, the car titles. Everything went into my encrypted folder. I backed it up to 2 flash drives. One I tucked into a box of tampons in the bathroom cabinet, the other I slipped into the lining of my old purse in the back of the closet. Michael would never look there. Every few minutes I paused, listening. His snoring stayed steady. I took pictures of our wedding photo on the mantel, the furniture, the safe in the closet. I catalogued it all. Not because I wanted to fight him for it, but because I refused to let him rewrite the story later. The truth would be organised, time-stamped, tangible. By 2 a.m., I was done. I stood at the bedroom door for a moment watching him sleep. His face looked softer in the dark, less guilty, almost like the man I married. But that man no longer existed. He had been replaced by someone careful and careless all at once, someone who kissed me goodnight and then sent heart emojis to Lena after I'd fallen asleep. I turned away and walked down the hall to the guest room. That night, I slept alone. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. The coffee pot was empty. That was the first thing he noticed. Normally, by the time Michael walked into the kitchen, his mug would already be full, steam curling in the air like a morning ritual we'd rehearsed for 3 decades. The eggs would be on the stove, toast browning. I'd be humming something without realizing it. But not that day. That day, I stayed in bed until I heard the shower start. I took my time brushing my hair. I didn't put on my slippers. I didn't open the fridge. I didn't crack a single egg. When I finally came into the kitchen, Michael was standing at the counter, looking confused, one hand scratching his head like something was missing. But he couldn't quite say what. He turned. "No coffee?" I shook my head gently. "Not today." He raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay? You sick or something?" I walked to the window and looked out. The backyard was soft with fog. A squirrel darted across the fence, disappearing into the neighbour's oak tree. I didn't answer him right away. Just stood there. Still. Quiet. He waited. Then he laughed nervously. "Did I forget something? Anniversary? Birthday?" "No," I said, "nothing like that." He came up behind me, placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. "You sure you're feeling all right?" I nodded once. "I'm fine." And I was. That was the strange part. I thought I'd feel guilt, that I'd hear some internal alarm for breaking a 31-year tradition. But I didn't feel guilt. I felt peace. I felt like I was standing on solid ground again. My ground. He stood there, unsure of what to do with the silence between us. "I can make us something," he said finally, already moving toward the fridge, but I stopped him. No need. I'm not hungry. He hesitated, then nodded, opened the fridge anyway and pulled out eggs, butter, bread. He started cooking. Badly, of course. He never really learned. I used to find that charming. Now it just felt like one more thing he never thought he needed to learn because I always handled it. I sat at the table and watched him. He cracked an egg too hard. Shell fragments everywhere. Burnt the toast. And I didn't help. Not out of cruelty, but because I was done feeding someone who'd been starving me for years without even noticing. When he finally sat down and ate in silence, I stood up, took my coffee, made only for me, and walked back to the window. He glanced up. "You're really quiet today." "I know," I said softly, watching the fog begin to lift. And I didn't say anything else. He came home late, again. Said something about traffic and a meeting that ran long, kissed me on the cheek like always. I was already sitting at the dining table, straight-backed, hands folded in my lap. The folder was in front of me, just a plain blue folder. No labels, no drama. "Hey," he said, setting down his keys. "You okay?" I nodded. "Sit down, Michael." He hesitated like he felt it, something off in the air, the way a dog senses a storm before it comes. But he sat. I didn't start with words. I opened the folder and turned it toward him. First, the hotel receipts, then the messages, the screenshots, the photos of Lena, Danielle, a copy of the bank statement with the charges from the Rose Bay Inn, circled in red ink. He stared. At first, he didn't speak. Then came the blinking, the shifting in his seat, that familiar tightness in his jaw. "Where did you get all this?" No denial yet, just calculation. "I've had it for weeks," I said. Silence. Then came the first attempt, casual dismissal. "This isn't what you think." Then came the second, minimizing. It was stupid. A mistake, just escape. It didn't mean anything. Then the third, anger. "You went through my stuff, my phone, that's a violation." I said nothing. Then came bargaining. "We can fix this. We've been through worse. Remember when your mother passed? I stood by you. We got through that. We can get through this." More silence from me. His voice cracked. "Don't throw everything away over a few stupid choices. Please, Sarah." Finally, I looked at him. Really looked. 31 years. 2 kids. A life built from Saturday grocery lists and shared calendars and small invisible sacrifices. And now here he was, reduced to half-truths and panic, sitting across from me like a man who suddenly realized he wasn't invincible. "You lied," I said quietly. Over and over. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. And not just to me. To them too. To yourself. He leaned forward. "I made a mistake." "No," I said, cutting him off. "You made a pattern." He went still. The silence between us thickened. I closed the folder, stood up. "I'm not angry anymore, Michael. I'm not even surprised." His eyes searched mine. I stepped back from the table. "You used to be my home," I said softly. "But now, you're just the fire." And I walked out of the room. He didn't follow. The house was quiet, eerily so. Michael had gone to the hardware store. He still thought I was just taking a break. A few nights at my sister's, maybe. A little air. That's what I let him believe. But I wasn't taking air. I was taking my life back. The boxes were already labelled. I'd been packing for weeks. One drawer at a time, one closet shelf when he was at work, one file folder every time he took a shower. It turns out you don't need much when you've already lost the feeling of belonging. I took the photo albums, my mother's dishes, the quilt I made during the year I lost my sister, my books, the real ones, the ones I'd read more than once, a few framed photos, some clothes, my garden gloves. That was it. Not the wedding china, not the antique dresser he swore we needed, not the armchair where he used to sit and read, while texting other women. I left the bed, the couch, the dining table where we shared thousands of silent dinners. I didn't want anything that held the weight of pretending. I packed light, because I wanted to feel light. The key to the new apartment was cold in my palm as I stood at the threshold. A second-story walk-up with peeling paint on the railing and the faint smell of curry from the neighbour's kitchen. Nothing fancy, just mine. I opened the door. The space echoed when I walked in. No furniture yet, just soft beige walls, scuffed baseboards, and a cracked window that let in the kind of light that makes you feel like the day isn't over yet. I set the first box down on the floor, then the second, and then I stood there for a long moment, just breathing. No one calling my name, no one asking what's for dinner, no lies humming in the background like a broken refrigerator. I made tea in the chipped mug I'd packed first, sat on the floor with my back against the wall and sipped slowly. No TV, no music, just the sound of my own breath. That night, I slept on a borrowed air mattress with an extra blanket folded at the foot. The room was quiet. My phone didn't buzz. My name wasn't being spoken behind my back. There were no flowers on the nightstand, no kisses goodnight, no shared toothbrush cup in the bathroom. And still, I slept better than I had in years. Not because I had company, but because for the first time in forever, I had peace. It's been 7 days. 1 week since I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. I haven't spoken to Michael. Haven't checked his social media or my email or the bank account we used to share. He's called twice. I didn't answer. He didn't leave voicemails. Let silence say what I no longer need to. This morning, I woke up to sunlight across my face and nothing else. No weight on my chest, no second pair of shoes by the door, no mental checklist of what he needed, what mood he might be in, what version of myself I'd have to wear for the day. I made coffee, just 1 mug, no sugar, just cream, just how I like it. I stood by the window, watching a little boy ride a scooter down the sidewalk in his pajamas, hair a mess of curls. His mom chased behind him in slippers. She was laughing. The sound floated up through the window and landed gently on my skin. I smiled. I didn't realize how long it had been since I smiled just because something was beautiful. I went for a walk. My own route. My own pace. No one to wait for. No one asking when I'd be back. Just the rhythm of my footsteps on the pavement and the warm breeze sneaking through my sleeves. I stopped by a bookstore, bought a journal. It's green, soft-covered, and blank. I sat in the little park near the cafe, opened to the first page, and just started writing. Not about him, not about betrayal or receipts or women with wine glasses. I wrote about how the sky looked like the inside of a pearl today. I wrote about the way my coffee tasted better when I didn't rush it. I wrote about the quiet and how healing doesn't come in thunderclaps. Sometimes it comes in the softness of nothingness. No chaos, no blame, just space. I used to think freedom would feel like fire, hot, raging, dramatic. But it doesn't. At least not for me. Freedom feels like a loose sweater on a cool morning. It feels like your own keys in your own hand. It feels like finally hearing your own voice again after years of silence. It feels like a woman walking down a street with no one waiting to redirect her. And when I looked at my reflection in the bookstore window, I didn't see a wife or a victim or a woman someone chose to leave. I saw Sarah, just Sarah, and for the first time in decades, that was enough. People always talk about starting over like it's a door you walk through, like you pack a bag, close your eyes, and when you open them, everything's new, clean, unbroken. But starting over, I've learned, feels more like sweeping up glass barefoot. Slow, careful, painful, and still, you do it. 1 shard at a time. It's been a month since I left. I still catch myself listening for his footsteps in the hallway. I still turn to say I'm home when I walk through my new front door, forgetting that no one's there to hear it. But the silence doesn't scare me anymore. In fact, I'm starting to love it. I've gone back to old things, things I abandoned along the way. Baking, watercolours, mornings that aren't rushed, long baths with music and no one knocking on the door, asking where the toothpaste went. I sit in coffee shops and read, letting hours pass without checking the time. And I write. Pages and pages. Not about him. Not anymore. I write about the strength it takes to choose yourself when everything in you wants to beg for answers. I write about aging, not as loss, but as gathering, of wisdom, of softness, of power. No one tells you how strong you are until you have to be. And by then, it's not about proving anything to the world. It's about finally seeing yourself clearly. Michael was a chapter, a long one, some of it beautiful, some of it brutal. I've stopped rereading it, stopped trying to change the ending. It ended exactly how it needed to. Do I forgive him? Maybe not all the way, but I forgive myself for loving him, for trusting him, for staying as long as I did, for thinking I had to shrink to be worthy of being kept. Now I know better. I'm not something to be kept. I'm something to be met, fully, deeply, honestly. There's a freedom in that, a quiet, grounded kind. Not flashy, not loud, just real. Some lessons cost everything. They crack you open, split you down the centre. But if you let them, they give you back something far more valuable. They give you back yourself. I used to think Michael was the solid one, the strong one, the anchor. But he wasn't. He was the storm. And I was the lighthouse. I always was. What part of this story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them. If this story felt close to your heart, give it a like, subscribe if you want to be part of a space where real stories matter. Got a couple more minutes? Check out the next story. It's also about the things we rarely say out loud.